All right, kind of crazy to go from that to just this, huh? Wow.
I don't think you should be
Holy
torturing people with those sounds, is what I think.
Jesus. Well, try to find uncopyrighted music that's not that. It's damn near impossible. So if somebody wants to make me a tune to start the show, I'm happy to put it out there. But going from that directly into us talking is like the biggest letdown change that could possibly happen. Hey guys, welcome. We are back this week. We are on Tuesday, as you guys know, instead of our normal Wednesday night. Just some scheduling conflicts there this week. But next week, we'll be back on normal time on Wednesday to answer your questions. But, start by letting us know where you are in the country. Maybe you're outside the country watching us. And if you have questions about real estate, about finance, mortgage, Josh is here, of Buywise Mortgage locally. My local lender that probably does 90% of my clients' business, some cases more. So actually just closed one today for a client. So congrats there. And put your finance questions there below. We'll talk about interest rates. We'll talk about qualifying and all that good stuff. So Josh, welcome. Seems that Jennifer Lego might have a crush on you. I'm just saying.
Oh,
I saw something earlier. I think it's the new
well,
camera.
it's got to be the camera. Actually, the problem is it's too high resolution. You can see the full glory. It was better when it was a little fuzzy, a little mystery to it all.
Too funny. I'm actually going to zoom this out a little bit. Here we go.
I'm disappointed that no one talks about how awesome I sound in my new headset. They just like the new camera. No one mentioned the headset. The best part is it's got noise canceling, so if anyone's causing problems, I don't have my dog this week, but if she were barking or causing other problems, you shouldn't be able to hear her.
Well, they're not complimenting you yet because they've seen your headset go out in the middle of the live before, and they're
No,
yet to know if
that
that's
was
a one-time thing.
the old year. That was little small frail thing that's been replaced with this big, much more potent thing that has like an 18-hour battery.
All right. So anyway, enough of us talking. Let's get into some good stuff here. Got Jose giving us crap about the music. Understand, Jose. Unfortunately, I made that video last week. Didn't have time to make another to put on there. So that's what we got this week. Michael, looks like maybe becoming a real estate agent in Texas. I know you were in the process of buying a home. I know Kyle gave you a lot of support in guiding you through that process. And so congrats on that. And welcome to the real estate world if that's what you're getting into. And thank you guys for joining us. Jose wants to know your golf handicap, Josh. It's golf.
Yeah, considering that this arm is not functioning, Jeb and I were just talking. He gets to golf here in the next few days, and I am permanently or semi-permanently on the shelf. This shoulder gets to be replaced somewhere towards the end of the summer. So I got about 18 months before we know what that handicap looks like.
Yeah, it's not good. Let's just be honest. Anyway, let's start with Zachary's comment here. Got a good question. Where would one stand legally if builder wants to cancel a contract? Build would be in South Carolina. So we've talked about new construction many times on the channel. The one thing that typically if you have a contract, you're somewhat binding in that contract, right? But I've recently heard, and I'm actually talking about a video that's going to go out tomorrow about new construction versus resale. And I have heard recently of several viewers saying that, I'm in contract on new construction, but yet the builder came back to me and said, we agreed on this price, but we're going to change it. The price is now going to be X because our costs are actually going to be higher because of lumber or because of labor or whatever it is. So this is the new price. And so typically if that were resale, if that were an existing home and the seller tried to change the contract, they would be in violation of the contract. They wouldn't be allowed to do it. And that's because, realtors, real estate associations across the country kind of use not the same exact contract, but templated in a way that protects both the buyer and the seller. Well, new construction, that contract is really written to protect the builder in most cases. So I would say that, in a normal situation, you would have a leg to stand on. In this case, because it's new construction, I don't know that you do. Josh, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So just to put it into context, are we back at an 8-page California, or is it a 10-page? 10-page
Or
California
10
contract, right?
page. Yeah, but now
Okay,
it's
so
actually like 12 or 14 pages if you count all the other crap that's
with
in it.
with
But yeah.
all the other stuff, but the contract proper is 10 pages. Jeb talks about 16, 18 pages once you factor in all of the other disclosures they want you to include with that. So you go, holy geez, what in the world could there possibly need to be 15, 16 pages of documentation? Now we pull out a builder's contract. I have one here we were looking at earlier today, 144 pages. So the most important part is those extra 130 pages are not for your benefit. They're there for their benefit. Most people don't read them, and even if they did read them, what are you going to do? You want the house, you like the house, and they say, here's our contract. If you go, I'm not going to sign that one. In this market, the leverage is with the seller. The seller in this case is the builder. They're going to say, okay, well, cool, we'll sell it to the next guy that comes in. So you're kind of stuck with whatever their contract is, and you're going to need a lawyer to dig through it and find out, did they carve out for themselves the right to cancel, to raise the price, any number of things that may be impacting you here. So that's unfortunately the bad news is they probably do have the right. The only way of knowing is getting a real estate attorney to dig in and tell you.
Yeah, and that's not going to be, it's not going to be easy in many cases, right? I mean, it's good to have a real estate agent represent you on new construction because they can ask some of these questions, but even then, their contracts again are written to protect them. Now, some cases, those builders might be willing to strike through things and do certain things if you have the proper representation on your side that is willing to ask the right questions, or maybe you're in an attorney state where the attorney can represent you and do that sort of thing. But a lot of times, again, in new construction, you're somewhat held to their contract. So unfortunately, Zachary, we don't have a solid answer without knowing the full ins and outs. But I could say that, yeah, there's a chance that they might be able to cancel just based on, what's in that, what's written in that original contract. So, unfortunately, probably gonna have to do some reading or some hiring of an attorney. All right, let's move on here.
You have a super chat you would like to get to.
Yes, I do. Let's see here. $10 coming from, hey, Evan, let's go. Thank you, Evan. Appreciate that. It is very much appreciated. Buys Josh, 3 805s. He always compares it to beer. How many beers can he buy with the money
Two and
that
a
he's
half.
gifted? So 2.5 beers he can get, unless you go to an Angels baseball game, and then you can get one. Maybe not even one.
A thimble, one of those sampler cups.
Yeah, you get the hat like you used to get ice cream at back in the day. Hello, guys. Looking into new build, do you think it's easier than buying used, especially with all these bidding wars going on? Second, should you pay off all credit before applying for a mortgage? I'll address the first part and then let Josh address the second part. Again, a video on new construction is going to come out tomorrow, 4 p.m. California time. My normal drop time, where I'm talking about new construction versus resale. There's some things recently that have come up in that world that makes it not as easy as it once was. One is that now builders are not necessarily keeping their price that they've come up with when they've decided to form the master plan of community or what have you, and they have a set a base price, if you will, on certain models. Now that base price is one that is being used not only as the price but kind of as a starting point, where it used to be if you paid that price, then you got the house and then you paid the upgrades and stuff on top of that. Now, because the market's competitive, builders are going out and saying, hey, what's your highest and best price? Because we've got 3-4 people that want this property. So in some cases, you are having to bid above that price. Another scenario I read earlier today, actually heard of earlier today, is there are communities building property, new construction homes, and new developments where the builders aren't even setting a price. So you go in and essentially you're making an offer without knowing what they really want on that property, because they're just doing, hey, how much are you willing to pay for this property? So they're not even coming up with a price in some cases. So it's a crazy world in the new construction, with new construction as well as resale at the moment. So in the past, I would say you're a little safer in some cases going that direction. Now, I don't know that that's the case, but maybe that video that I talk about tomorrow, because I talk about some of the pros and cons as well in there, and new construction versus existing will help you out. And I don't want to talk about it, all today, and then, you have to rehash it tomorrow. So check that out tomorrow, and hopefully it will help out. And I appreciate the super chat. If you have any other questions, leave them below. So Josh, what are your thoughts on paying off credit before applying for a mortgage?
More importantly, before we get to that, Jeb, when you have a 4 p.m. drop, is that like when the Backstreet Boys would do their album at like midnight and the whole Tower of Records, there'd be 114-year-old girls waiting out front to get it? Is it the same thing?
It's similar, but it's more of a Britney Spears type thing. Young girls looking for Britney Spears to drop. Kind of my audience here. It's just primarily 18 to 20-year-olds. It's great.
Cool. I just wanted to make sure when I heard the new drop was coming, that was what I immediately thought. So I had to get that one.
It doesn't sound anything like the music from the intro, if you were wondering.
Oh, good. That would repel people. So talking about whenever everyone asks, what should I do? Should I pay off all my credit before applying for a mortgage? There's two pieces there. What are you really asking? One, should I get rid of these payments so I can clear up my debt to income ratio? Two is, will that help and maximize my credit score? And one of the things that's hard for people to wrap their minds around is different credit grades, different credit levels will be impacted differently by those changes. So if you have a 750 credit score and you have small balances on 4 or 5 credit cards, it's not going to make much of a difference if you pay those off. If you have a 645 credit score and you have 5 cards 90% maxed, it could make a massive difference both in your score and your debt to income ratio. So unfortunately, Evan, without seeing your credit report, it'd be hard to say whether you would see much benefit credit score wise. And usually people asking about this, almost always it's kind of barbells. They're on one end of the scale. It's the person with an 800 score that wants to know if they should try to get their score to 820 before they apply, or it's the person at 620 saying, hey, I got to get this improved. So if you're on the high end of the scale, probably doesn't make much difference. If you're in the low end of the scale, it could make a massive difference, but you want to be careful because we can actually see situations where paying them all the way to 0 will not be as beneficial as paying them down to a couple $100s. So talk to your mortgage professional when you go through it. And if you're on the high end, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're on the lower end, it could be an important part of your planning of that process. The second piece of it, does it really help you in terms of qualifying? It sure can. Let's say you have $400 or $500 worth of credit card debt that you're looking at paying off, and that pushes your debt to income ratio too high. Paying those off could put you into a much better situation. But what I always like to have is to have all options available on the table. So if you were in California and we were going to be sitting down talking, I would say, let's do absolutely nothing. Let's keep the money in the bank and keep the credit card balances where they are. That gives us all the options in the world. If it's better to have the money available, we don't do anything. If it's better to have the debts paid down and the scores manipulated upwards, we can do that also.
Now, Josh, do lenders still have the ability to kind of have a, I don't even know the word I'm looking for here. It's almost like where they can show paying down credit, paying down debt, how it will affect the score. What's the word I'm looking for here?
So it's a what if analysis is the common name for it, but there's also another one called a wayfinder. So the wayfinder is like a magic button. We say, hey, the borrower has $8,000 to work with. What's the best you can get the score to? And it goes through and optimizes it. The what if, we actually say, what if we pay off this account, and this account? Or if it's a collection, like a lot of times what we'll see is a client pops up, they have perfect credit. There's a medical collection and they have a 690 credit score instead of a 790. And we go, okay, if we pay it off, doesn't make much difference at all. But if you pay it off and you're able to get it deleted, now we're back up to that 790 credit score. So depending on where you're at and what you're looking to accomplish, either the wayfinder or the what if will absolutely allow us to do that. Sort of the follow-up question that everyone always likes to ask, okay, so I need to do that and get it all dialed in before we get started, right? You absolutely don't. We can improve the credit at any point all the way through the process up until when we order your loan documents. So let's say, we're 10 days away from closing and you had a 600 credit score because all your credit cards are maxed out. You come into an inheritance, you got $50,000, you can pay it all off. We can do what's called a rapid rescore as long as we have that credit report. We provide it to the lender. They attach it to your automated underwriting findings, update your pricing, and either get you a better rate or a lower cost loan based off of the higher credit score.
No, good stuff there. So hopefully that helps you, hey, Evan, brother, and guide you in the right direction. So LaShonda is coming from Texas. What were you going to say, Josh? Thanks, LaShonda.
I was going to say, what if it's not even Evan? What if it's like Evan's wife and she's always like, hey, Evan, let's go.
That's probably how he got the name. I'm just going to throw it out there. He can confirm. below, or she in that case, who knows?
Yeah.
And MJG saying, thanks for all your help moving to my first house in Nashville area in 2 weeks. Congratulations. That's awesome, especially in this market. Nashville is super competitive. So congrats on getting in there. Glad to be a part and helping you, and guide you in the right direction. Jimmy is asking, Southern California, where do you see home prices in 2025? That is a difficult question, Jimmy. A lot could happen between now and 2025. We got, interest rates potentially, going up during that time frame. Probably not for a couple of years, but they could go up to, and at the end of when the Fed said that they will kind of keep them low, which is the end of 2023. You got a lot that could happen. You got some inflationary things, some potential deflationary things happening in the market. Josh, what are your thoughts? I don't know that I'm willing to say that home prices are significantly higher. I don't know that home prices are going to pull back from here. I mean, I do think 2021 is going to continue like you've seen so far. 2022 probably looks a lot like 2021 to some extent. Once you start getting past 2 years out, it's hard to say what's going to happen, just because, you got stimulus coming in, you've got potentially additional stimulus depending on what happens, moratoriums. You don't know what's going to happen. There's just too many factors. But thoughts, Josh? You willing to go there?
No, yeah, no, about the same thing as you were saying. 21, we have momentum and a trajectory. We know what 21 is going to look like. Even if it slows down, it's still hot. 22, very similar. Hopefully it slows down. You cannot have a market going double-digit growth 3 years in a row without major problems or issues. So the bigger question is, say, when we're looking at 2025, how about the more important question is, are prices higher or lower than they are now? They're going to be higher. We're going to have another 5 to 10% appreciation this year, another 7 to 10% appreciation next year. So combined, that puts you somewhere between 12 and 20% above the current levels. We will correct at some point. The question becomes, when do we correct and where do we correct from? And looking forward, what could cause a correction? We've talked about this a million times. The reason why prices are going up is a supply and demand imbalance. Lots of people willing and able to buy homes right now, few homes for them to purchase. The Wall Street Journal had an article earlier this week that was appalling. KB Homes in Houston, Texas built a development of 125 homes. And instead of selling those to 125 homeowners, they held them as rentals and then sold the entire bulk to an investment company like a hedge fund that is going to keep those as rentals. So it doesn't do anything. So we've built this new home stock, doesn't do anything to help that supply demand imbalance. And when you see what's happening, why is a big hedge fund willing to do that? Because there's nowhere that you can get yield. What is yield? It's in effect, it's your interest rate. So if you have any investment, your yield is how much money did I put up? How much money do I get back? I don't remember the number, but on those 125 homes, it was like a 50 or $60 million transaction. So if you're a hedge fund and you say, I got $60 million, what can I do here to get a return on it? You say, well, I can buy these 125 houses and they're going to rent for $2,000 a month, multiply it across 125 homes across 12 months, and you're getting a yield that's 4, 5, 6% cash on cash return, which you can't hardly get anywhere else. While at the same time, that $50, $60 million portfolio of 125 homes is going up in value. Right. So not only have we talked about the demographics of borrowers coming into prime home buying age and being demand for homes, now we have hedge funds being demand for homes because it's a good source of yield and capital appreciation for them. So at this point, we can't build homes fast enough to bring a supply-demand imbalance back into a more proper balance. Secondarily to that, interest rates are never going significantly higher from where we are. The government cannot afford to have interest rates what we consider them to be normal and what the markets would set them at. So a 4% interest rate is never going to happen across the board for your average home buyer. Maybe for a subprime borrower, someone with low credit can't document their income. So in a world of permanently low interest rates where investors are chasing yield and people want to buy homes and live in them, I don't know, like, I don't mean to sound pessimistic. people have accused us here of being, well, you're in the housing industry, so you're pro and you want these things to happen. These are bad things. These are a problem.
Right. Yeah.
You and I are talking about what can we do with some of the other industry groups that we are aware of to bring attention to this, because Washington, D.C., they don't get it. They have no idea what homebuyers are facing out here and what a problem it is when everyone is having to overpay based off of the fundamentals. As much as we hate to say it, we would be better off, everyone here on this call that wants to buy a home will be better off with 5% interest rates in a semi-normal world with lower home prices, where those hedge funds can go get yield somewhere else and they're not having to compete with you for homes. So it's a long, detailed, convoluted answer to where our home prices in 2025. I think they're a good bit higher than where they are right now. And putting where my mouth is, I own my home. I have a fourplex. I have a second home that we use on VRBO, and I'm in the process of buying another property from a client who got in some distress. And normally you would say, hey, it's a beat up house, fix it, throw it into the market, make your cash and move on. Right now, I'm going to hold that house because I think 2-3 years from now, you're going to see home prices 15, 20, 30% higher than they are right now. So if we're hoping that there's an entry point that's better to get back into this market or get into this market, I don't see it coming. As much as I hate to say, it's not panic and do all you can to jump into the market right now. It's just saying, I don't think there's going to be a better entry point further in the future unless your income rapidly increases.
No, good explanation. Long explanation for many of you out there. I know it, but it's detailed, and that's what you guys need. I mean, you need the detail to back up, the answer. A lot of people, think that us as real estate agents, Josh as a mortgage professional, want to see this crazy appreciation, that we love it, that we love to see homes sell quickly over asking price. All that, we don't. It's not good. It's not sustainable. It makes things very difficult, and it creates, potential issues, right? If the market right now is appreciating at 5-7%, you asked me what was going to happen in 2025, I would tell you probably really predictable that it's going to look a lot like right now, just because that's a more sustainable growth. Whereas now, when you see these large, appreciation, I mean, 10% is what CoreLogic's home price index came out for last year. 10% appreciation kind of across the board. That's not sustainable. So we're not going to go down that rabbit hole anymore. We're going to get to some questions here. Have 2 super chats, and we have a lot of questions coming in. We're going to get to them, but taking the super chats first. Justine came in and asked, can my mom sell her townhome to my brother? She owes $280, market value is $600. Can't you walk away with equity? What is the price? What is the process like? Appreciate you too. So we appreciate you as well. Thank you for the super chat. It is appreciated. So to answer your question, yes, she can definitely sell the property to your brother. Now, how your brother is going to get financing for that property is a different scenario, right? So can she walk away with equity? Absolutely. She can determine whatever price she wants to sell that home at to your brother. If it's market value at $600, she can sell it at $600. If she decides to sell it for less, she can do that as well. She dictates the price on that. Now, as the borrower, your brother, he's got to figure out how he's going to pay your mom for that property, right? So she owes $280 on it. So she's not able to do seller financing on it, where he pays her every month and then eventually pays the mortgage off. So he's got to come up with at least $280,000 to pay off her current balance. And chances are she's going to want some cash out of this deal as well. So whatever price they determine is going to have to be financed. So they would go to a lender like Josh, and with a purchase agreement, you're still going to need agreements. And even in these cases, you might not need a real estate agent to sell the property for you to do all the traditional stuff, but it might be worth paying a real estate agent, finding an agent, maybe a family friend or somebody that's willing to do a reduced commission, maybe 1% in some cases, or a flat fee, and just do the paperwork, right? Do the proper documentation to make sure both parties are getting what they should out of it. Even though it's family, it's important to make sure the transfer is done correctly for many reasons. And the lender's going to require it, right? The lender's going to require certain documentation. And when you have an agent involved, again, you don't need an agent to pay them, normal commissions, something reduced there to do the paperwork. That will give Josh or the lender or whoever what they need in order to move forward. It's no different than a traditional purchase. Anything you want to add to that, Josh?
Absolutely, because we end up doing about 5 or 10 of these a year, and like Jeb said, there's great value in having a realtor involved in the transaction. And I can tell you from my experience, a realtor is never involved in the transaction because people say, "Well, I don't want to pay them. I'm a seller. I've got a buyer. What do I need a realtor for?" So what happens is I end up being their realtor. Hey, you need this, this, this. We're going to set you up with escrow and title. This is what they do, or worse yet, they have their uncle who's in the escrow business. We just had one of those, and it was a horrific experience because it was not a great escrow company that wasn't super helpful, and it was a problematic experience all the way through. So by all means, you don't want to pay 5 or 6% when you already have identified a buyer and seller, but there are definitely agents out there that would help you with a flat fee for processing the paperwork, and it makes it go a lot better. Because what I'll say, I've bought and sold tons of homes. I have my broker's license. I am not your normal mortgage person that you're going to come across. 80% of mortgage people can't do their own job. They certainly can't do the realtors as well. So you're just asking for problems and headaches. You end up leaning really heavily on the escrow officer and the loan officer to do a lot of what the realtor's doing. And as great as I might be at it, I don't do it every day. Jeb does. He's better at it than I am. So I would just second that. And I would say, it's more important. We always say, people say, hey, do I go to a broker? Do I go to a bank? Do I go to a credit union? And the answer is you go to an expert. In this situation, more than any, especially if you're not going to involve a realtor, you go to an expert that's done this a long time, that does a lot of purchase transactions, that's bought and sold homes, that knows how to structure this. The loans aren't necessarily a lot more difficult, but it's a little bit more complex, and there's a few funny little guidelines you got to be careful. It's a non-arm's length transaction when it's family to family. So you just want to not get on the wrong side of it. So make sure you find an expert to handle the financing to help you with this. If you can find someone good that you trust in the area to handle the paperwork for a flat fee, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Okay, so great explanation there. Hopefully that provides you what you need, Justine, and in answering that question. Jennifer Lego, one of our moderators here, want to say thank you, Jennifer, for being here and helping moderate the chat. It is much appreciated. But she also did a super chat, which was not necessary, but appreciated. So asking she says appraisals, but then she'd correct herself and said comps pulled and used. Now, I've seen you ask this question a couple times, and quite frankly, I meant to answer it the last time you asked it.
You were holding out for $15, Jeb.
Yeah, that's
the
reason. I wanted to see how many times you would do it, and if you were willing to put your money where your question was. But no, this is a good question. In the way I pull comps is going to be different than maybe the way somebody else does it, because I'm in a densely populated area, right? We're suburban. There's houses everywhere. We're not a city where I'm located. I mean, we are a city, but we're not like a downtown city where we have high rises and that sort of thing. So most of the properties around me are single family homes. There's some condos, there's some townhomes, and what have you. So traditionally speaking, if I'm trying to find a value of a property, and I'm considering doing a video on this because it's come up a couple of times where I actually take you through the entire process of how I do this and come up with a number. So if that interests you at all, leave it in the comments, and I'll try to see how to do it more in a way that people can understand. But what I do is I look up the property on title. I figure out how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what the square footage of the property is, what the lot square footage is. And if I have conversation with the client, I try to find out, maybe I've seen the property, I know the upgrades in it, what they've done, when they replace certain things, all of that good stuff. In some cases, many cases, I haven't seen the property yet because somebody's called me and says, hey, look, I'm looking to list my house. I've had some basic interaction, but not a lot of in-depth interaction. And so I have just some preliminary facts on the property. And so I take, those facts, if you will, the bedroom, bathroom, square footage, lot size, and then I try to find similar homes in a neighborhood. So for example, most of our blocks here in Huntington Beach are mile blocks, right? So, or half mile blocks, if you will. And so they're large squares if you kind of looked at it from a map. So if I know a property's in a community, and we have a lot of tract housing here, and in those tract housing, you have different developments, right? You might have the college tract, or you might have the bird tract. And why are they called that? It's because all the streets in that little development are kind of all named after colleges or birds or whatever it is when they built these out. And so I try to find similar properties that are like the one that I'm looking at on value. And so I go back usually 180 days just from a big kind of a bird's eye view. and I try to find properties. A lot of times, because this is tract housing, you can find something that is a model match. And if you can't find a model match, you try to find something that is similar. And for example, if a property is 1,200 square feet, I search properties from 1,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet, because those are similar in size. I'm not looking at 1,900 square foot homes in that case. And I'm going through those, and I'm trying to find, again, similar lot sizes, similar locations in the communities. If one backs to a street, I might not use that because, if my property doesn't back to a street, or if it does, maybe I try to find one that does. And so I realize this is probably, difficult to understand in many ways, but I try to find as similar a property as possible to that property. And then in this market right now, in addition to that, I'm looking, hey, where did they list it at? Where did it sell? And in some cases, I'm contacting agents to find out, how many offers they had, what happened. If a property's pending or in escrow, maybe I'm calling the agent to find out where it might close at, to try to get as much information about that property as possible. And then I'm looking at the market saying, okay, market's appreciating what, 1-2% a month right now. I mean, in some cases, maybe more. And factoring that into what I think the value of a property is. So that's a long way of getting around to, kind of coming up with a value. But, I'm trying to find as much information about a property, a specific area as possible to come up with that value. Now, in places like Ohio or North Carolina, where I'm from, and it's rural, that's a whole different animal, right? I mean, that is, you don't have tract housing, you have custom housing. In many cases, you have homes that were built a long time ago versus some that are new. I'm not experienced enough to be able to guide you in that, but they follow a similar, a similar path in coming up with value. Real estate agents, appraisers do. They try to find as many similarities as to the property they're appraising, and then they factor in for the ones that aren't similar, right? So if they have to use a comp that maybe isn't a model match, it has more square footage or whatever, then they're deducting or adding on based on that difference in square foot to come up with, how that affects the subject property. Again, I could keep going on here, kind of explaining myself in more detail, but instead of boring you, Josh, anything that I'm missing there that you want to add to that?
No, you're dead on. I think there's some additional insights I can throw here from our perspective. We get to see how agents pull comps. Oftentimes, we talked a couple episodes ago that we had an appraisal that came in $50,000 low, and we went to the agents and said, "Hey, can you get me comps?" Fortunately, both of those agents do a lot of business, are very professional, and know their job, and they come back with accurate stuff. But when that happens and the appraisal comes in low, and the agents lose their mind and say, "We want to do a rebuttal," that's crazy. Okay, cool. Here's what I need. I need the active comps from that area, or the closed comps, not the active comps, that are going to support the value that you think is there. And we talked in the last message here, in the last question that we answered there, me saying that 80% of loan officers aren't good at their own job. What I'll go back to is saying most realtors, when I ask that, when we say, hey, we need some comps to support this for the rebuttal, they'll send over some of the craziest stuff that you've ever seen. Pending sales that haven't closed, which we cannot use, a property that's 2,500 square feet when our subject property is 1,500 square feet. So it's really important, again, when you're working with an agent, that they know what can be used in terms of an appraisal. The whole purpose for comps is for Jeb when he's trying to price the home, or for us when we're trying to support a value potentially on a refi or on a rebuttal, on that type of stuff. So it's very important that they be accurate, and most agents aren't great at it, and many are, but again, it just goes back to supporting why you need to work with experts on both the mortgage and the real estate side, people that are in the market, that are doing a volume business and doing it well. The other piece that I would throw out there is when your realtor is looking at comps and telling you what they can list your home for, it's often very different than what we can get an appraisal for on your refinance. Appraisers are much more aggressive in bringing in a value to support a purchase contract because there's another person on the other side saying, I am willing and able to pay that. In this market, there's 5, 6, 15, 50 people saying, hey, I'm willing and able to pay that. On a refinance, they're going to be a little bit more conservative, especially in a rapidly appreciating market. So we may have comps that say one thing, but but it ends up being a little bit different on a refi versus a purchase. So Jennifer, hopefully that was worth $15 of question there. We both bloviated for quite some time there on it.
No, I apologize on mine. And again, I'm happy to walk through on the video. I just, part of it is just me going through the process and things I don't even think about because I've done it so many times. So for me to walk through it in my head with you I'm probably skipping some things, but you get the idea there. I'm scrolling back up to some earlier chats here or some questions. Just be 82 White is asking, final stage of closing at the end of the month. The seller requests to do a lease back until 6/18. How can I make sure I'm protected and that they leave on or before 6/18? So there should be a seller in place addendum in California. I forget exactly what it's called, but essentially a seller lease back is what it is. And it's a lease agreement. It's no different than, it is a little different than a tenant lease agreement because the seller is staying in the property after the close of escrow. But there's a document that they should fill out, and it essentially goes through that and protects you as the new owner of the property after the close of escrow. Now, how can you be protected or how can you confirm that they're going to move out on that date? Yeah, that's one of those things that, it's you got to work with them. You got to have some trust in the process. Now you could have them, you could in theory make them put in a deposit into escrow for staying in the property, no different than a tenant. I mean, there are things that you can make them do as a new tenant, just like you would any other tenant. But typically speaking, you don't do those things in most cases because, you're working together, trying to come to a resolution in closing a transaction and what have you. But, your realtor should have an addendum or a document that you can add to the purchase contract that allows them to stay in the property where you're protected. So.
And Jeb, I think that question relates back to the article that was brought up last week, the folks in Riverside that I think they closed early last year before COVID
January,
even broke out. And they couldn't get the people out because they were saying, "Oh, I'm a tenant. You can't evict me." So California, and this isn't unique to California government. Politicians love writing rapid legislation and throwing it out there to protect consumers and not thinking it all the way through. The unintended consequence of the way the eviction protection works in California is that person was protected and the authorities couldn't get them out. So depending on where you're at, hopefully you have better written COVID eviction moratoriums, and that wouldn't be a problem if the person decided to stay. But if you're in California, I would be much more careful with it.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for watching. If you're here right now, I appreciate you being here. If you haven't done so, hit that like button, follow us, stay up to date on everything housing and mortgage related. We got TJ Max asking, what headset is that, Josh?
It is a Jabra Evolve 75. And for me, it's awesome at the office. It connects to the computer for this stuff. It also connects to the cell phone. It can keep two connections open at the same time.
All right. So we got Gerald in from Silicon Valley, transplant living in Irvine. So thanks for joining us. Vicky in Pennsylvania. We got some New Yorkers, some Southern Californians. Thank you guys for joining us. Mail Cold, awesome resource for us in the market. So we appreciate you guys being here. Sky Tanks Lab is from New Jersey. So thank you there. Let's see here.
I like his little logo. It's a tank that can fly in the sky, matching the Sky Tank Labs. I like that.
There it is. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure I'm covering all the questions that you guys asked earlier. There's a lot of thank yous. I think I got most of the stuff here. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. If I missed something, you guys are welcome to put it again and we'll see it. Michelle Kim is asking, and I see Joey Crack's question. I'll go back to him. He's one of our favorites from last week with the gloves there that Josh loves.
Hopefully he replaced that image in the last 7 days.
He left them to prove a point. How much should a renovated house affect prices? I'm seeing a lot of old, outdated houses asking for similar prices to newly renovated ones and think that's crazy. I'm in SoCal, LA County, think. So renovated properties should, in theory, sell for more than properties that haven't been renovated. But you're in a market right now that is very competitive. There's not a lot of houses on the market, and therefore buyers are willing to buy things that they wouldn't normally buy, and sellers are trying to get prices that they wouldn't normally be able to obtain because there might be additional competition where maybe something is nicer. So in theory, properties that have been updated should sell for more. You should see that happening. So if you got one right now that's selling that has been, that's not quite as nice, if another one wow, I'm gonna start over. If another one comes on the market similar to that property, but is updated, is renovated, in theory, it should sell for more. No different than a flip, right? I mean, last week I talked about a client looking at a property it's actually in LA County, and it was a flip. They bought this thing in January for around 550. I forget the number exactly, but they probably put a $40,000-$50,000 remodel on this property, and that might be stretching it. They didn't do a lot, and that they relisted the house for $750, and it ended up getting offers over $800,000. So short period of time, small fix, renovated it, kind of brought it up to today's, what buyers are looking for, and were able to bring a lot more value to that property. Now, had they kept it in the condition that it was in, it wouldn't have fetched that same price in most cases. Now, I never saw it before, but in theory, renovations will add value. But right now, just understand that sellers have control and buyers are doing, I wouldn't say dumb things, but dumb things in some cases in buying some of these properties just to get in. So, if they weren't doing them, those properties would sit and values would decline. Anything there, Josh, on that one?
No, what I would say is know where you're at in the market cycles. When the market is at a low, so say 2008, when the bottom market just tanked, a distressed property that needs a bunch of work will sell at a big discount because the nice homes are cheap. So people will require a big discount. And at that time, contractors' materials are cheap because the economy isn't doing well. So everything's kind of on sale. So at the bottom of a cycle, great idea to buy a fixer, either to flip or to live in yourself. When we get to the top of the market, you see the flip side of it. People get priced out of the really nice homes, and now they have to look at the lesser homes and sort of bid those prices up. And what I see, the biggest mistake I see people making is buying a property that's not distressed, but dated, needs a bunch of work to be brought up to speed. And they're saying, well, it's $50,000 less than the really nice one down the street. You're like, okay, well, that's an 1,800 square foot home. To make it look like that house, you're talking $80,000 or $90,000 with contractors are very busy and charging a ton. No one's giving big discounts on materials. If you're talking about framing, we all know what lumber prices have done, copper prices up. So just be really careful. Really, the sweet spot in this market, there isn't one, but I think you're less likely to overpay for a nicely remodeled home versus something that needs work, just because there's so many people trying to get into the nice neighborhood and cheaper homes.
Absolutely. Austin X asking, know any good realtors in the Huntington Beach area? I know one, only one.
Only one?
Now, there's a lot of great agents in Huntington. We're in a market where there's a lot of professionals. You had a lot of great options. I would like to think I'm one of those people. So if you need help, reach out. Would love the opportunity. If you don't feel like I'm a good fit, I will refer you to somebody in my market that could help you.
No, Jeb, we just closed 2 deals here in Huntington. One with a good friend of yours, very good agent. Another agent that farms my neighborhood where I live, very good agent, very good transaction. So definitely talk to Jeb first, and then if you don't like him, he'll connect you with someone awesome.
Yep, there you go. Joey Crack's asking about interest rates. We're going to talk about interest rates in a little bit, so just hang on there. Joey will get into rates. D Boy Trucker is asking, is it common to have a lender pass my loan to another lender? It happened to me 3 times back to back last 3 months on a new loan. So I don't know if he's talking about after closing on the loan, it's getting passed to different servicers, or if he's talking about during the process. Josh?
And the crazy thing, in the normal market, you see stuff like that. The servicing gets sold multiple times in the first year. So that could be the question. But post-COVID, servicing values are so depressed that most everyone's holding their servicing and will sell it later on when the values of those servicing rights increase. So I don't necessarily think that happened, but it kind of confuses me. If you apply with me, I cannot give your information to anyone else. Now, remember, I'm a broker. So we are going to give it to a wholesale lender, and it may be 2 wholesale lenders if for some reason the first one didn't like it, but we're not going to give it to another loan officer to work on your file. And we couldn't do that without your written authorization to do that. So we'd love to see more information on what exactly happened, but no one should be passing your information along to another lender. If it was a broker like me and they had a problem with the first lender, they could have moved it to another lender, but 3 would tell me that something interesting or odd is going on there, or like Jeb thought, you just talking about the servicing on your loan being closed. which is also uncommon in the current market, but there's nothing you can do to prevent a loan from being sold.
And there's nothing wrong with it. If a lender sells your loan to another lender, it's not a big deal. You just have a new lender to pay, but it's not going to affect your loan. It's not going to affect anything there. So nothing to really concern yourself with on that front. TKB, thoughts on CFPB proposal to ban all foreclosure until 2022. This will devastate inventory. What will be the impact to the mortgage-backed security market, mortgage rates, et cetera? So for those of you who don't know, the Consumer Financial Bureau, Protection Bureau, I forgot the key word there, came out yesterday, I believe, and said that they are proposing an extension on the foreclosure ban through the end of 2021. And it's really there to protect servicers, right? They more or less, what they did was they came out and said, anybody servicing a loan right now, you better have your shit together when these people come and they need, and they're at the end of forbearance, you need to figure out how to help them. And if you don't, we're coming back on you because you've had more than enough time to figure this out. That's the gist of it. And so what happens is they're saying, hey, let's delay this thing a couple more months to give these servicers enough time to figure out how they're going to work through the ends of forbearance, right? Because you might have a couple of people coming at the end of forbearance and at the end of March, and then April may be a huge month, and then you might have some at the end of June or July or whatever. So they're going to be spaced out. But these lenders, depending on how many of these loans they have on their books, have got to figure out how to work through this. I mean, how many are going to loss mitigation? How many are they going to allow deferral? How many, and with deferral, is there paperwork? Okay, now there's paperwork. We got to see if you qualify for this. We need to have enough people in the back to be able to wade through this to make sure you do qualify. So there's a lot going on here. And it may seem like, it's not necessary, but it kind of is. I mean, it's one of those things I kind of do agree with. I mean, they should have gotten it together by now, but it's almost necessary so that you don't have these problems, this build in the pipeline, if you will, where back in the day, 2008, 7, 8, when short sales were a thing, these lenders would get so backed up on short sales that you might not get an answer for months on an offer for writing a short sale, because these lenders didn't have the manpower to work through it. They didn't have the systems in place to work through it. And towards the end, they were really efficient, right? They had figured out what to do, how to, online portals, how to submit documents, how to look at everything and say, oh, we can approve this in a day. So that's essentially what they're doing, is they're giving these servicers more time to figure it out. And I know it's frustrating for those people out there that want to see more inventory, that want to see foreclosures come to the market. But even then, like I've said many, many times, a lot of, this time is different. These lenders, because of how this went down, the government basically said, you can't work, you can't do these things. You basically have to stay home to, curb the spread or what have you, and didn't allow people to work. And therefore, we came back and said, now you've got these moratoriums in place and what have you. So now the government's got to figure out how to get themselves out of this. And this is one of the ways that, they're going to work through this. They're not going to allow all these people to just go belly up.
Well, Jeb, look at the flip side of it. So if they had just said, hey, status quo, you guys handle loss mitigation however you want. A year ago in March, there are almost no homes in distress, not behind on payments, not in the foreclosure process. So those loss mitigation departments at the lenders were tiny. So almost no staffing. Overnight, you go to monstrous requests for forbearance, required forbearance offerings by the government. And oh yeah, by the way, as you're staffing up people to handle all those requests, they can't come into the office. They have to work from home. You have to hire and train them without ever bringing them on site. So it could have been a horrific thing. There's no world in which anyone needs until 2022 to figure this out. On the flip side, there's not a downside to it. So for the government, it's a win. Are they inflicting pain on the businesses by not letting them foreclose? Not really. They've put systems and processes in place that the businesses that are holding these loans are not suffering. So they're saying, be cool, give these people as much time as possible. But going back to T's question here, this will devastate inventory. And I would say, how is it going to devastate inventory? There wasn't any foreclosed inventory to begin with. So were we expecting foreclosed inventory to come into the market? These people, the ones that are truly in trouble and have to sell, will eventually have to sell. They will come into the market, and they're going to come into the market with more equity than they would have had they sold at the beginning of 2020. Despite forbearance and missed payments getting tacked on to what needs to be paid off, the appreciation has outpaced that. So they're going to be fine. They should have a good exit. It shouldn't require a short sale. If they had equity a year and a half ago, they're going to have an equity a year from now. So it will work out fine. But in terms of MBS market, mortgage rates, it will have zero impact. It doesn't impact anything because we're going to have a slow and orderly filing out of the market of the folks who are not able to afford their homes any longer.
No, exactly. And hopefully that provides a little clarity. And again, none of this it's not done, right? It's not approved. It's just a suggestion, if you will, at this point, from the Consumer Protection Finance Bureau, or whatever that acronym is there. But likely will come into play just because of how this whole thing plays out. So
Jeb,
yep.
there's another question here from another T. We go from TKB to
hold
TJ.
on, but we got Joey giving a super chat, so we're gonna jump to Joey real quick, because Joey is we'll come back to the Biden question there. Salute, gents. Love the streams. What are the traits, red flags to look for when choosing a real estate agent? Also, if you had one question to ask them to help you decide, what would it be? So first off, Joey, thank you for the support. Thanks for super chat. It is appreciated. I'm going to let Josh jump on this first and see where he goes with this. Red flags to look for in choosing a real estate agent, Josh.
In terms of contacting them, I would look at their turn times and getting back to you. Now, let's realize a good producing realtor, I watch Jeb every day. I know he's not available if I need to call him. He's not sitting by the phone. So I don't mean, is it someone that answers the phone or texts you back immediately, but is it a reasonable time frame? Is it 2 to 4 hours? Are they responsive? Do they hear you? Like, the biggest thing that I hear on the loan and the real estate side is, are they really asking you the questions of, what do you need? What are you looking to buy? Why do you want to buy? What's your timeline? Are they being detailed about that? Or are they just like, hey, are you pre-approved? Can we show houses this weekend? So turn times, what are they asking? And in terms of one question, what's one question you could ask them? That's a hard one, but what I would say is, why do you do this for a living? Of all the things you could do to support your family, why do you sell houses? And there's more than one good answer to that, but they should be prepared to really quickly give you a really good answer that resonates with you as to why of all of the things that we do. Like for us on the mortgage side, I do this versus all the other things I could do because I love numbers and I love finance, and this allows me to make the biggest difference to the most people by improving their life through home ownership. So that's really what that is. And there's other ways to answer that question, but they should have a good way of answering why they make a living selling homes, and hopefully that their answer resonates with you.
No, absolutely. And, to answer the same question, we'll go back up to the red flags. I would say in this market, a red flag would be somebody, there's a lot of agents, right? A lot of people have their real estate license. I mean, if you're in California, depending on where you're located, I mean, California, I think you're in New York, if I remember correctly. California is full of real estate agents. Everybody knows at least an agent, right? But the red flags are, there's a lot of people out there right now selling property, the ones that don't do this full time, right? They have a full-time job and they do this on the side. And because the market's hot, they're out there selling their cousin's house, their mother's house, their neighbor's house, maybe their house. And, I would watch out for that sort of thing, especially if you're a buyer. If you're a seller, you need to work with a full-time producing agent. But as a buyer, same thing, right? You need to make sure that whoever's helping you it knows what they're doing and does this full time. It seems easy right now to sell property because of how fast things move. But understand, things are moving very fastly, and with that, a lot of T's don't get crossed, a lot of I's don't get dotted. Yeah, don't get dotted. And so there's a lot of boxes that don't get checked, so to speak. And this is not the environment where you want to hire the person that doesn't do business just to save on I wouldn't say money, because, in some cases it's not any cheaper to do it. Just make, to do a favor to help somebody out, if you will. Just, make sure you're working with somebody that does it full time. And a question to ask somebody, I would go back to, kind of a two question here is how long have you been in the business? How many properties do you actively, what do you sell in a year, right? I think that gives people a really good idea of whether you're active or not, right? I mean, I might say, well, I've been a real estate agent for 18 years. Well, how many properties did you sell last year? One? Well, yeah, I mean, I could have sold one every year for the last 18 years and only had 18 sales. But if you find somebody that's doing business out there, that's actually closing transaction, chances are they have the experience necessary to guide you through that. And if you find somebody that's been in the business longer than 15 or so years, then you've got somebody that's been through a similar market, not similar in all ways, but similar in ways where, it's not as easy as just, putting a sign in the yard, selling the house, and moving on to the next one. Now, it might seem like that's the market we're in, but there's a lot going on here that is that requires professionalism and requires somebody with experience to deal with. And so you want somebody that's been through a downturn in the market and lasted. They continued to sell real estate when real estate wasn't fun. They dealt with short sales. They dealt with foreclosures, because that person probably has the experience necessary to look for things in a property, know the right questions to ask, be able to negotiate. So it really goes back to experience. And I would say that would be my go-to really in any industry. You want to make sure you're working with somebody that knows what they're doing. Same thing with loans. You find somebody that's been through 07, 08, 06, 05, whatever the years you want to use during the housing crisis. Because those people, if they're still standing right now, they've done something right now, because they weathered the storm. Now you'll have some people that were in the market then, quit, and went and became a trainer, a personal trainer. Again, Josh will say at 24-hour fitness for, a number of years. And when the business got good, they came back. You can look up people's NMLS license numbers. You can find out, how long they've been in the business, where they worked during that time frame. And, just go off experience, whether you're looking for a lender or a real estate agent. Sorry, guys. I just went down a rabbit hole.
But what Jeb was talking about, Southern California, a lot of high price markets throughout the country. A realtor can sell 4 houses a year and make $50,000-$60,000 and be on the beach or the golf course most days. So there are a lot of people that do that or try to do it on the side. On the mortgage side, a guy can do a deal or two a month, and it's better than a lot of full-time jobs income wise. They're not great at their job. They're not professionals. They're not full-time doing it. I'm not saying there aren't realtors out there that do 5 transactions a year that are great. There are, but they're the exception rather than the rule. And on the loan side, if you're only doing 20, 25 deals a year, you're just not seeing enough files, and you're not in the game enough to know. So you go to a lower price area, you're in the middle of Nebraska, and the average sale price is $200,000 and the average loan amount's $150,000. There aren't people doing that. And if you're in the business, you want to make a living, you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8 transactions a month on the loan side and doing 2, 3 sales a month to make a nice living. So depending on where you're at in New York, the prices are pretty high. You probably have a lot of the same issues that we have here in Southern California with part-timers or people augmenting their primary income by trying to sell a house or two a year.
Yeah, I think there's a stat out there. I haven't seen it in a long time, but the average real estate agent makes like $30,000 a year, right? And so, depending on where you are in the country, well, I don't care where you are in the country. That's not enough money to survive on in most cases as a full-time job. So, most professionals are doing substantially more than that. Have years of experience, and I think you'll know in having that conversation with them whether you're talking to a professional or not. So hopefully that helps. Josh, do you have that question that you threw up earlier?
Yeah. So TJ Maxx instead of TKB says, will you cover the Biden proposed bill? Will it affect the housing market if it actually goes through? So I got a 80-page summary of it. Starting on page 11 to about page 14 was their housing stuff. And this isn't a dig at Democrats. Republicans would have put out an equally vague and non-comprehensive plan. There's nothing in there. There's plans that are grand and sound wonderful, but there's nothing in there. They're talking about trying to get 2 million vacant homes into the hands of homeowners, rehabilitated into the hands of homeowners. I don't know. I don't know how you do it, and there's no details in there. So it's a year or two. If you look at what the infrastructure plan that the housing plan is a part of, they're talking about doing it over 4 years. So what are we talking? 2, 3, 4 years? It's nothing that's going to help us now, and the plans are going to have to get a lot more specific than what they have in there to make me think that there's any hope for improvement. There are things that the government can do over time to improve it. There's nothing they can do today that's going to change this market for any of us this year, but there are things they can do that will change it over time. I'm just doubtful that they will.
There you go. I have a couple questions here regarding PMI. We'll start with the one from Jason here asking essentially how to remove PMI. Yeah, he's owns a home. It's risen over $100,000 in value before closing escrow. That's a hell of a deal you got there, Jason. Depending on where you are, what's the best move to get rid of the PMI, Josh?
So the easy button is less than 24 months. You can refinance with rates up a little bit right now. And again, we're going to go over interest rates and where we think they're at and trending. But you can refinance. But if you got in at the lows of the rates and you're at 2.75, you probably don't want to go up in rate to get rid of the mortgage insurance. Once the mortgage insurance is on there, the lender can require you to have it for 2 years before you can petition to have it removed. You can ask them before that. The answer is probably going to be no, but reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're seeing home sales in our area. What can I do to get it removed? And they're probably going to tell you, hey, we require it for 12 or 24, most likely 24. And this is what the process is to get rid of it at that time. The standard removal of it coming off of your loan is generally based off of the loan amortizing down to a certain loan to value. So it's going to be way into the future. You're going to want to proactively reach out to get it removed, but those would be your two options, either refinance or contact the servicer to see what their policies are for having it removed and in what time frame.
All right. Thanks, Jason. So Michael's got not a similar question, but using FHA and paying PMI. How do you stop paying PMI if he doesn't put 20% down?
So I would have to pull up the chart with bigger down payments. I don't know with 5%, but with 10% down on an FHA, your mortgage insurance will eventually go away. But if you're doing a minimum down, 3.5% down FHA, it's on there for the life of the loan. We've talked about this here before, but I'll go through it again. Even when you could get rid of it, it would go away when it was amortized down to 78% of the original loan balance. And that generally takes 10 plus years, like 11 and a half, 12 years. No one keeps an FHA loan that long. The home's going to go up in value faster than that. You're going to refinance it. You're going to move. So to me, it's not a big change in the FHA program. They should get rid of it because this is not a big gain. Under Obama, HUD said, hey, we need our FHA mortgage insurance fund is undercapitalized. We'll help it refill by making mortgage insurance be on there for the life of the loan. Doesn't help because the loans are never going to run that long. So
Right.
It looked good on paper, but it didn't solve any problem. And it makes people stress or worry about, oh, I don't want an FHA loan, which you did a great video on. We ran through the numbers that for the vast majority of borrowers with 5% down or less, no matter how good your credit score is,
Right.
FHA is going to have a lower payment and lower cash to close. There are a couple of downsides to it that you always want to go through and be aware of. But to most buyers, what's the most important thing? What's my payment? How much money do I have to have at closing? And FHA is almost always the best answer to those two questions.
Right. In fact, I read an article yesterday on FHA, and there's some proposals out there, right, to potentially lower PMI. I think a monthly PMI, not the the amount that you pay per month, the percentage, just based on how much they have actually built up in reserves in that account. Now, there's obviously two sides of it. One side saying, it's too early to reduce because of, we don't know where things are going and so on and so forth. But, you could see something in the future where they potentially reduce it, but it wouldn't affect those that already have it in most cases, right? It would only be for new loans going forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we have we got 3 3.75 more years of a Democrat in the White House. So we are going to get past COVID. If you saw Marcia Fudge, the new HUD chair, said it's too early. It's exactly what you said, Jeb. It's too early. We don't know how this is going to play out and how that's going to impact the mortgage insurance fund. Well, in a year and a half, 2 years, we're going to know, and there's still going to be a year and a half of Biden administration left. It's going to happen. because I don't think that MI fund is going to get hit hard by problems once the once the foreclosure moratoriums are up. So it'll happen, but it's not going to help any of us right now. The biggest thing that it will help, if you go to do a streamline refinance on your FHA, you have to save 0.5%, and any savings in mortgage insurance goes into that. So if you have a current loan at 0.85 and they lower it to 0.5, that would be 0.35%. We would only need to save about 1/8 in the interest rate to be eligible for a streamline. So it's going to happen. It's just going to be 2 years down the line.
Got it. Good stuff. Let's see here. Maria is asking the question, is it worth giving 10% and not 5% down payment on conventional loans? So, Josh just talked about it. We've ran some scenarios and videos that I posted where, I've compared 5% down to 10% down to even 3.5% down. So an FHA loan versus a conventional at 5 and a conventional at 10. And in many cases, that FHA loan was better than the 5% down, because it offered a lower monthly payment. Now, as you got the super high credit scores, 780 or so, or 740 or so, I don't remember exactly, maybe the payment was a little bit different on that 5% down versus conventional. You did see a difference at the 10% down in those examples with higher credit scores. But even if you had a lower credit score, in many cases, that it wasn't that big of a difference in doing that. And I think Josh is going to tell you that money in the bank is, cash is king. So if you look at, have your lender compare 5% down versus 10% down, show you your options. If the 5% down option makes sense to you and allows you to keep money and that payment meets your budget, then maybe 5% down is the best option, and because it allows you to keep that money in the bank. But it does affect your PMI, right? The more money you put down, the higher your credit scores will allow your mortgage insurance rather to be affected and lower in some cases. So those are things to consider as well. But that comparison will allow it to put them side by side and really give you a good explanation. Josh, anything you want to? I just stole your thunder.
No, Jeb the Glory Hound. There's not much left to go over. I would just give you a simple example. A $400,000 loan amount to go from 5 to 10% down is $20,000. That 20 grand is going to save you about $100 a month. And I always ask my clients, would you rather save $100 a month on your payment or have $20,000 in the bank? It's very rare that someone says, no, I want to save $100. And usually it's the person that they have to save the $100 to qualify for the home that they want. Otherwise, everyone would rather have $20,000 in the bank than save $100 on the monthly payment, which a large portion of that is going to be interest. It's going to be tax deductible. So yeah, the side-by-side comparison, because numbers never lie.
There you go. And another thing to consider in this market, if you're making an offer on a property, putting 10% down versus 5% down could entice your offer with the seller, right? With the agent on the other side. So maybe if you're making that offer and you're able to do 10% down, maybe you're writing that offer at 10% down, or having that conversation, with the agent on the other side saying, hey, look, I can make an offer at 10% down, but I want to do 5% because of this. Are you guys going to look at my offer any differently by putting less money down in this scenario, right? Because we're in a market where sellers, talked about this too in videos, where sellers, outside of price are looking at down payment. It's I don't think that should be absolutely the next thing they look at, but I'm seeing it a lot. Down payment is important to sellers. So understand, putting a little bit more money down, depending on where you're located, might mean the difference in you getting an offer accepted and not. So another thing to keep in mind there. Let's see. Let's move on down. Michael Duree has another question here. Example of home values going up, please. 30% times 232. So what is that? So that's $69,000. So if you're talking, if you own a $232,000 home, if it goes up, 30%, you're looking at a $301,000 home at that point, by going up 30%. I'm not sure exactly why 30%, but it could be because we're talking about markets appreciating over the next couple of years. So hopefully that helps out answer that question, Michael. Poor Trader's got a good question here. Josh, $20,000 in his stock trading account. Should he move it into, or should they move it into banking account before applying for loan approval?
It doesn't matter unless you're going to move it and have it in there for 2 full future statements so that it's seasoned for 60 days, because you're going to have to explain it anyway. So whether you do it now and then document the transfer, or you do it right before closing and document the transfer, you're not avoiding any documentation unless you get it into the other account and seasoned for 60 days, two full statements that don't show that deposit or transfer into the account. So at the end of the day, it doesn't much matter. You're going to do some work either way.
And another thing to consider, assuming it's in cash in that account, right? It's cash, it's equity in your account, and not actually in stocks. If it is in stocks, you just need to keep in mind that those stocks fluctuate in value, right? Which could affect actually how much you have in there. I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but understand also when you go to pull that money out, if you have to sell those stocks, get them to clear, wait for the money to hit the account, and then pull it out, that process sometimes can take a little bit longer. So make sure you're giving yourself enough time if your account is actually invested in something to be able to move it around, sell it, so on and so forth. So you're not, at the end trying to get things done in a short period of time. So let's see. Bandit's got an interesting thing here. 49% appreciation in Kootenai County.
Kootenai County. It's in North Idaho. Don't
I
act
can
like
read
you're
that.
don't act like you're new, Jeb. Don't act like you're new.
Dude, I'm from the South, but Kootenai, in Northern Idaho from April 2020 to April 2021. So 49% people. Wow. If there are any markets as hot as that, I don't know. That would be, I think some properties in that county have probably appreciated maybe 49%, but I don't think as a county it has, because that would be absurd. But maybe I've been wrong many, many times. My wife tells me that all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you're 49%, you're probably leading the surge there, my friend, in appreciation.
Well, here's an article from the Spokesman Review, the Spokane newspaper. So in Kootenai, you don't actually have your own newspaper. They do. It's not a real newspaper. So the Spokesman in January said 15% year-over-year appreciation, and I have no doubt it accelerated like everywhere else did. But of all the major metros, it was at Phoenix and San Diego, possibly Seattle, that are appreciating the fastest, and they're low double
digits. I think
digits.
Boise was right up there as well. Whatever that's in. What county? Can't think. But anyway.
Yeah. And the reason why everyone in Boise and Kootenai County hate Californians is their home price appreciation is going up that fast because we have so many people selling in California, cashing out massive amounts of equity, going up there and distorting their market above and beyond what local incomes could and would support. So it's pricing that if you're in Southern California, you think it's bad here. Imagine if someone came in with a bunch of equity from selling an even more expensive home and was outbidding you and pushing prices up. It's a little bit irritating. I went to college at Eastern Washington University, which is about 30-40 minutes from Kootenai County. So we would look at that time, you could get lakefront stuff in Kootenai County, really nice custom homes on the lake for $700,000-$800,000. Those homes are $2.5-3 million now. It's some spectacular appreciation.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about rates, Josh. A lot of people here want to know about rates. We got Willow asking about conventional rates. We had our homie with the gloves earlier. I'm at a loss. Joey Crack. How could I forget that? Asking about interest rates. So rates, we talked a little bit earlier today. Rates have retraced a little bit, and think maybe they could head a little bit lower. So why don't we dive into that in a little bit more detail here? Talk about rates, maybe keep it short, keep people on board.
Yeah, from worst to best right now, we have improved maybe an eighth in interest rate, but that's great because we had gotten a half point, almost 3/4 of a point worse in some cases over about a 4 to 6 week period. So if I showed you the chart, you would see that we're trending sideways now. So it seems to have put a bottom in on bond prices or the increase in interest rates. So we still have FHA rates for most credit scores are going to be at 2.75, which is a really, really good interest rate. If I told you that a year ago, you would have been like, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Now people remember the 2.25 from December and think it's not that great. For your conventional borrowers, it varies much more by credit score. So you're either going to be in the high 2s, low 3s, maybe a little bit higher if it's a high balance loan with a low down payment, condos are going to push it a little bit higher. But without going too deep onto it and boring you guys with the technicals, we had a question here, and it may have actually been Joey. Hold on, let me get back here and look here early in the conversation. Was just asking, someone was asking, we had mentioned previously that we think that this is overblown, that rates have gotten worse than they should, and they're likely to correct. I'm actually here. Let's just throw up the screen here because it actually helps me to visually see this. This stuff doesn't mean anything to you guys other than this down, 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 down. That's bond prices getting worse and interest rates going up. So we go from basically January 26th through March. So all of January, all of February, and most of March, rates were getting worse. But this little sideways move here tells us we've hit a bottom, and it looks like we're making a move up. So the only thing you really need to know right here is we are at the 25-day moving average, just above it actually, and that's an important level. So if tomorrow we get a move above it, it tells us we're going to make a move up to this line here, which is a stochastic level of resistance, and then this, the 50-day moving average, and the 50-day moving is coming down. So if we get a good day tomorrow, we're going to make a move here that will take us 102.95 to 103.7, about 0.25% better in rates, and we'll put most everything back into the high twos. So the thing I would say is rates are great. Even at their worst, they've been great. It looks like we're likely to get better here. My big worry has always been what we're looking at is when the March CPI figures and then April and May come out, they're going to be really hot figures. So it looks like maybe the market was kind of front running that, and some of the sell-off we saw in bonds was exactly that, was just preparing for those hot CPI figures, and now the market's adjusting to it. The Fed kind of jawboned it a little bit with their last meeting, saying, hey, yes, inflation is going to run hot over the next few months, but we think it's transitory and will go away. We're not worried about it. We're not changing our policies. So it's a double-edged sword. If you're in the market, if you missed the boat on refinancing, you're in the market to refi, or if you're looking at buying, it's great. You want your payment as low as possible, but it's also fueling some of this appreciation and the high activity of buyers overbidding for properties.
All right, no, that's good. It's good to have the chart, the visualization. There's some people out there asking about access to the chart. You can pull up bonds on. I don't know if that specific chart, but you can follow the 10-year Treasury and different treasuries and in any charting software. You just got to know the ticker to type in to follow it. And then again, he has different trend lines and stochastic. I can't even say it. Stochastics set in there, and you would just have to set those same in your program to be able to have those moving averages and what have you. But it's information that's available to anyone. Maybe not exactly that, but pretty close. Thanks, guys. We got Antonio here asking a question. Super chat, $10. Antonio, thank you, sir. About to close on a property, new construction in a month. After making my down payment, I won't have much savings left. Should I wait to save more to have a better cushion or go ahead and close? So one thing I would ask you is, can you back out of the contract at this time and not lose your earnest money, your escrow deposit, right? By backing out now, are you risking anything? One. Two is, what do you think you gain by waiting, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you should purchase the house, because if financially you don't feel secure, you need to listen to that, right? I can't tell you what you should do, but what I will tell you is that I think home prices will likely be higher in the coming months. Last week we talked about this, and we said, right now home prices are appreciating faster than most people can save money. Josh made that profound statement, and I've used it a couple times since then, because chances are you're not going to be able to save as much money for that down payment. Now, what makes you, why can't you close on it and continue to cut in other areas and maybe save some money that way? Not to suggest you do that, because if you do decide to wait and you end up buying the property, you end up going to pay more money for it. So maybe your down payment goes up. So did your savings go towards the down payment, or are they actually savings in the bank? And, once you're in that property, if you use those savings, then what, right? You're back in a similar position. So I don't know that there's an easy answer here, other than just figuring out your level of comfortability and what your your long-term plan is, because that's really what's going to guide you. The worst thing is to buy and be house poor, to get into a property and not have anything and not be able to do anything because you own a property. But if you're going to lose your deposit, or if you're planning on doing this again in 3 months, then I would tell you probably no benefit to waiting at that point. Anything on there, Josh, that you want to add into that?
No, you guys have heard me say before, I would rather see a borrower put a minimum down and have some nice reserves versus a bigger
Right.
down and
No,
use up
absolutely.
all their money. So we're in a situation here where we don't feel like we're going to have reserves. I wouldn't be super comfortable with it, but it's a crazy market. The market's most likely gone up. If it's new development and you can look and say, what are the new homes that are going to sell this next weekend? Are they going in at a higher price? You may be sitting on some equity. So going back and winning a bidding war or putting a new construction back under contract with a further delay, I don't know that you're going to be able to save quickly enough to really change this much. So Jeb's dead right. Be prudent. You know your situation. But what I will always tell people is a payment, when you're buying your first home, it's always a little uncomfortable. When I bought my first place, I was living at home rent free, and the payment was $1,138. And I was panicked. I had no idea how I was going to make $1,138 payment. But that's what every buyer feels. And within about 2-3 months, you're like, oh, hey, that wasn't bad. I can handle that. So just make sure you're looking at it realistically. You're not panicking yourself unnecessarily, and make the best decision you can.
Absolutely. If you guys are still watching right now, you appreciate this. Do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, or actually the like button. That helps out. Helps more people see the content, helps us share. And, Josh and I's goal is very similar. He's on the finance side, I'm on the real estate side, but it's to help homeowners. His is on the financial side. Mine is, related, but to get buyers into property, right? I mean, it's a difficult market, but, we're here trying to educate people, provide guidance, empower homeowners, with the right tools, and get them into homes. So if you appreciate that, let us know by hitting that like button. Richard has a scary statement here, Josh. He is this concerns me a bit.
Hopefully he's not
He's
watching.
riding
He
home
says
on his
he's
motorcycle. He's
listening.
actually a Huntington Beach guy. He's commented on several videos before. He's on his way home. I imagine him driving down the 405 right now,
Lane splitting.
lane splitting, listening to us. That sounds like just terrorizing. On his, I can't even imagine what that must be like. He probably wants to just run that thing right in. I won't even go there. But
As long
thanks.
as hey Jeb, as long as he doesn't have the mount between the handlebars and he's trying to watch while he's going 70 lane splitting down the 405.
Yeah. So, but thanks for watching, Richard. The support, man. It's awesome. Let's see here. We got a lot of questions coming in, and something, guys, I want to talk about for just a second here. While we have quite a few viewers on, over 200 at the moment. So I was on a kind of a mastermind call earlier this morning. Do one the first Tuesday of every month, and this week was it. And this is where talking to various agents across the United States, all real estate for the most part. There are some lenders in there, but primarily real estate agents. And these are agents, again, we talked about a lot of these cities already. Boise, Idaho. There's multiple in California, multiple in my market. You've got Austin, Texas. You've got any hot market out there at the moment, Omaha, Nebraska, anywhere really. And every single, we were talking about solutions to problems. We were talking about the emotional toll on home buyers, things that we could do as agents to help people. I mean, all of these different things, common questions that I get with you guys. And honestly, not that misery loves company, but as home buyers, regardless of where you are, you're all in a very similar position to where there's not a lot of property out there, multiple offers, you're having to go above the asking price. It's tough. This was the common thread across every single person that had, was willing to speak up, that we're all seeing similar markets. So, just know you're not alone out there. There's a lot of people dealing with the same things that you're dealing with. And again, I know that doesn't make anybody necessarily feel better, but when you're putting in offers and you're not making headway, sometimes that can be frustrating, and you think you're alone in it. You're not. And know that, there are great agents out there that want to see people succeed. They want to provide guidance. They want to be there. And if you need one of those agents, if you're buying anywhere in the United States, if you need a lender, reach out. I mean, I can put you in touch with people that do business the same way I do, the same way that Josh does. And guide you through that process. So that's my little pitch for tonight. Let's see here, but we got some Good questions. I don't know should I sign a uniform residential loan application that does not have the correct information, Josh, specifically regarding being a first-time home buyer? I am, and it's showing me as not.
So two pieces to it. This is a common question. We always get this. Clients want to call after they see their disclosures and the application is in there and say, well, this isn't right. I only lived there for 3 years. You put 3.5. There's two pieces to it. That's an initial loan application, and we can correct anything, and you will sign a loan application with your loan documents at the closing that corrects those things that are material and important. Now, I wouldn't sign it if it said, hey, you make $12,000 a month when you make $5,000 a month, but something like first-time home buyer or not first-time home buyer, not critical, not essential. If it never got fixed, it's not going to make a difference to this. That box on the loan application is strictly there to tell an underwriter on any program that is limited only to first-time home buyers that you are a first-time home buyer. And they won't take your word for it, so it doesn't matter. They're going to require you to document it. So if it was material to the transaction, they're going to ask, they're going to dig deeper. So by all means, you want to make sure you're being truthful and not putting anything on that loan application, either yourself or your loan officer, that is misleading or inaccurate in terms of income, time on the job, time in a residence, debts, assets, any of that stuff. But remembering that it's going to be corrected. So that initial loan application is what I and my processor have put together based off of information you've provided. It hasn't been vetted, it hasn't been underwritten, and it will be corrected. So once that goes into the lender system and the underwriter gets done with it, she goes, hey, that's great. You think he makes $5,000 a month. I think he makes $4,200. And that goes on the final loan application that you're going to sign. We may say, hey, there's $180,000 in the bank, and they're going to go through the bank statements and go, no, we have $100,000 in the bank, and the other 80,000 was just deposits in and out. So an underwriter never takes anyone's word for it. When I've done my job right, I don't want to send them garbage, because it's garbage in, garbage out. It makes their job harder and makes them more likely to over-condition your file or ask questions that they shouldn't. We're an editor of your life story, and we want to put the best story possible in front of the underwriter, so they go, hey, this is a great story. I like it. Rubber stamp, you're good. But don't get too carried away that anything on there is essential. You want to be truthful, you want to be accurate, but it's all going to be vetted. Your underwriter is going to go through all of the documentation and make sure that everything on there is accurate. And in that instance, even if you put down $12,000 of income, no one takes your word for it. They document it, verify it, validate it, and it will get corrected on your final loan application that you will sign with your loan docs. So in this instance, I wouldn't worry about it unless you thought there was a first-time homebuyer program that you're eligible for, that you wanted to be considered for.
All right. Good explanation there. Here's another one from Enrique that's related to loans. Oftentimes buyers want to use, maybe money from their checking account or whatever to close on a property for the down payment and or for the closing costs, and they deposit cash. Sometimes they deposit random checks and what have you. So this is kind of related to that, asking, if I do large cash deposits into my account, stimulus checks, work bonus, that sort of thing, is it possible that my loan would get denied, or are they able to work through that, Josh?
So I like that Enrique put the multiple examples in there, because each one of those are a little bit different. The most important thing to remember is there's nothing you're going to do with your checking or savings account that is going to cause the loan to be declined. No one's going to look at it and go, oh my God, $1 million got deposited in here, this loan's declined. They're going to look at it and go, where did this $1 million come from? Is it an acceptable source? Is it an unacceptable source, but we can back it out and it doesn't matter to the transaction? You'd be surprised at how many times we have big deposits that we can't source or season, but we don't need them. The borrower had enough money without it. We just back it out and ignore it. Largely, what an underwriter is looking for with large deposits is to make sure you haven't borrowed money. So there's not an undisclosed debt that they haven't accounted for in your debt to income ratio. So in looking at these examples, a stimulus check, not a problem. We just have to document it and say, is it a PPP loan? With that, we know it's likely to be forgiven and there's no repayment right now. Is it, any of the stimulus checks where you just get $1,400? Boom, there's no repayment required. That's perfectly usable funds. A work bonus, perfectly usable funds. We may have to verify it with your employer that they gave you that. Now, cash savings could be a problem. It's not going to make your loan get declined, but it could make the funds there unusable. So no one can assure you that it won't lead to a denial. Let's say if you had $0 in your bank and then you had large deposits for $25,000 last month and you need $24,000 to close, we have to have good acceptable funds. So if they went through it, you explain to them, here's my accounts, here's the deposits, here's what the explanations are, and they told you everything's going to be okay, it likely will be okay. If they just said, hey, trust me, it's all going to be just fine, no one can do that without seeing exactly what the deposits were, how much other funds you have, and if you have enough money to complete the transaction if you aren't able to use those funds.
And what I will say about that too, Enrique, is that, that's why it's important to go through a full pre-approval process up front, not just a pre-qual, having a phone conversation with the lender, actually sending in documentation that corresponds with the conversation you're having, what you put on a loan application, because a good lender, professional lender, is going to look at those bank statements and go, hey, whoa, there's a lot of deposits here. We need to figure this out, where they're coming from to make sure we can use them, versus somebody that's inexperienced saying, oh, you got $50,000 in the bank, you're good to go, you've got more than enough money to make this happen, without reading between the lines. Because that professional is going to do their job. They're going to ask the right questions to make sure that money is sourceable and usable, so that when it comes down to it, you don't have issues, right? I mean, that's the difference in somebody that knows how to do their job and somebody that's just in a call center picking up the phone. So that's why it's important. Go ahead.
So let's throw this one in here. Al Bundy, one of our favorite viewers, pops up. He had a number of questions here in a row, but he had, what are typical items that buyers hide from originators that throw a wrench in underwriting? And my initial response is, well, that's silly. You can't hide anything from me. And the reason for that is I'm asking thorough and detailed questions. Everything that we do and go through will raise questions, and we will get the supporting documentation. The documentation will be reviewed and it will raise questions. My job is to be better than an underwriter. And if your loan officer can't say they are at least as good as an underwriter in terms of understanding guidelines, knowing detail, and asking questions, you'll get into issues and problems. One of Al's other questions here is, hey, do we do cross quals for other agents or for agents? And what questions do you ask that uncover shaky buyers? It's not a matter. We literally, when we're doing that cross qual for Jeb or any other agent, we are pre-approving them just like we're pre-approving you when you come to us. So every piece of documentation, your income, your assets, your loan application, your credit report, all of that stuff is going to come over to us. We don't have to pull our own, but most times we'll get cooperation from the other loan officer and they'll provide that. And any of the questions that I have in there, I'm going to ask your loan officer. You shouldn't have to do a cross call with me. Your loan officer should be able to go through it and answer any questions. We had one a few months ago with another agent. It wasn't Jeb's buyer, but I had 4 questions, and these were big questions. And the loan officer basically said, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. I already went through it with my underwriter. And you knew that he hadn't asked these questions. And that's the key, is I'm not asking questions to be a detective or make you feel bad. What we're doing is, again, I am an editor of your story. I want to tell the right story, the story that says you meet all of the guidelines. And if there's anything that we can uncover that doesn't meet the guidelines, we want to do that as early as possible, because then we edit the story to fix the information. Do we need to source those funds? Do we need to get a gift? Do we need to wait until you've had the money in your bank account for 60 days? There's a way around almost everything, short of not having enough income or having bad credit. Almost everything else can be worked around, but it revolves around that pre-approval interview and us going through everything in detail and uncovering all of the potential questions. There is literally no benefit for you in hiding anything from your loan officer, because an underwriter will ask, they will find it, and it will be a much bigger problem later on.
No, great explanation. Again, difference in working with a pro and not. T says, love the real estate channel. They have some of the best audience members. Rarely see trolls. That's because we hide them before you see them on your side.
We execute them.
Yeah, we get rid of them. And Jennifer's over there helping us out with that. So thanks, Jennifer. Thankful and Blessed has a question about new construction. Offered full asking price. The builder says he won't put in the last 2 mirrors. Is this allowed when a home is new construction? So if you're under contract and there were certain things in the contract that were supposed to be supplied based on what you purchased, then their contract, they probably have to hold true to that contract to some extent. But as we talked earlier, builders contracts are different than those of resale properties, existing properties in most cases. and therefore they are, they kind of beat to their own drum. So that in some cases they can make rules. Now, it's one of those things. 2 mirrors, is it a big deal? I think you went on down here and said that you priced them out and you were able to find them. So, it looks like you'll get it resolved. But in most cases, if you're buying property and that item was supposed to be included with the property, even on resale, say, for example, a homeowner, you're buying a property and they removed the mirror from the bathroom that was a fixed item, you can, in theory, say that you're not going to close on the property until that item has been fixed or replaced, or maybe in some cases you've closed on that property and then you find out the item is missing because you did your final walkthrough prior to them moving or what have you. That's something for your agent to get involved in. Contact the other agent, have brokers get involved if it's a big deal. Again, mirrors for most people probably aren't that big of a deal. If it were my client, I would probably just pay for it and make everybody happy. We all move on and what have you. In new construction, you're dealing with a different animal there. So hard to say exactly how it breaks down, but most of the time, if you're buying a property, they say something's going to be included, it's supposed to be included. So just keep that in mind. Josh, if you see anything on your side that you want to throw up there, here we go.
So John Jones has used my savings as a business account, being a sole proprietor. Last 2 years, I had net profit on Schedule C. P&L this year shows similar deposits as last year, but withdrawals are high for business. Okay. And it's a giant maybe. It could be okay. It may not be. So what we're looking at is the tax returns, the Schedule C from prior years are going to show us the income. And then assuming, say, you haven't done your 2020 yet because it's not due, we would get a 2020 P&L, and then we would get a year-to-date P&L. And then due to COVID, we have COVID overlays right now where we're going to get 3 months of bank statements to make sure that the average monthly deposits or gross income that we're seeing on the P&L, that we're still receiving that. And then you're also going to provide a balance sheet for the business that shows that those large withdrawals aren't putting you into a negative position where, hey, you made $100,000, but you owe $200,000 because you've been borrowing and burning through money. So again, most loan officers, all call center loan officers, they don't have a lot of experience with self-employed borrowers and the different ways that the income works and is calculated. So it's important you get with an expert, someone that's experienced, that can analyze the tax returns, the P&L, the balance sheet, and let you know. It shouldn't be a problem, but it absolutely could be a problem.
All right, good explanation. Cindy's got a question here asking about chattel loans for manufactured home in California. I'm not even familiar with what a chattel loan is. Are you familiar with?
Well,
chattel?
It's just not for the manufactured home. It's personal property. It's not real estate. So for us, we have zero sources for a mobile or a manufactured home unless you own it and it was built after 1978 and permanently affixed to a foundation on land that you own. So most likely this is personal property that's going to go in a park where you lease the space, and it's just a whole different world. Guidelines are different.
So with that said, I'm not familiar with the word chattel or whatever, but I mean, as far as lenders that do manufactured homes in California, occasionally I have clients that are looking to buy them. So I do know two companies here in California that do them. So if you want to send me an email, I don't remember them right off the top of my head. I will respond with those companies and the phone numbers, and you can look them up and call them. I know both of them do them. Their scenarios are a little bit different depending on, lease land in a park or buying it or what have you. So you'll have to wade through that, but it should give you some guidance there. And I'll put my email up. Josh, if you want to throw that up here. Well, here we go. We'll just throw it up here real quickly so you guys can grab it. Just my name at myname.net. So hopefully that helps you out and you can come in that way. All right, Josh, see anything else there? We can add it.
Interesting question here. So David says, did a cash out refi in January, wants to buy a second home due to job change, but was told need to wait 9 to 12 months to finance his primary residence. Is there a way around that? You don't need to wait that long. I've had a couple of examples here. We just literally, while we're on this call, an approval popped up for a borrower that they did a rate and term refinance on their primary residence in December. So 3 months ago, they says, this is my residence. I live here and I'm doing a refi. And we just got an approval on their purchase. The issue was they lived in the Santa Barbara area and they bought in Riverside, much cheaper, and the husband could work from home. Well, the wife just got an awesome job offer in the Santa Barbara area, and now they are therefore able to buy a condo in Santa Barbara, and we were able to get that approved. So it doesn't meet the guidelines. It's not even guidelines. It's not written anywhere. It just has to be believable and understandable. You told, when you did the cash out refi in January, you told that lender, I am going to occupy this as my primary residence, and you got the best pricing because of that. Now, if you go 4 months later and say, hey, I want to buy a different home as my primary residence, they're going to ask questions. And you said second home. If it's truly a vacation home or a second home, you have no problems whatsoever. But if you want to keep this home as a rental and buy a new primary residence, we have to come up with a very good explanation for the underwriter as to why, what changed in the last 3 to 4 months. Because it can look like you took the cash out for the down payment on this one, and now you're going, oh, cool, I'm just going to go buy another house, and I have 2 owner-occupied loans within a 3 to 4 month period. That's not going to fly. But if this job changes something, it's further away, you need a home closer to that, there's definitely ways of potentially explaining this. My guess is you can work through this. You don't need to wait 9 to 12 months, but there's some gray in your question that I would want to go through in more detail.
All right. Paola has a couple questions here, and this is the first one I saw from earlier, asking about the market in 2 to 4 years. Is it possible to tell? So Josh and I answered this question at the beginning of the live. So if you go back to probably within the first 10 minutes of the video, because the first 5 minutes is just kind of an intro there to get you in. Say 5 minutes after that, we answer that direct question. Kind of seeing, we talk about Southern California, but it could really be anywhere. I mean, I think you could take that and talk about, where we see prices in a couple of years. But the long and short of it is that prices are likely to continue upward for at least the next 2 years. What happens after that is hard to tell. But I don't think you see any huge declines just because of the way they're working out things with forbearance and foreclosures and moratoriums and all that good stuff. But check that out. And if you have additional questions, you can reach out to us.
And Jeb, if you don't have one, there's another good one here.
Yeah.
So first of all, he's got Trump with a pink 805 hat on. So he wins the day. That's it.
Where do you see the Trump part of it?
You don't see.
Oh, he's got Trump. I got you. I see.
He's got Trump
I thought that was him.
With a pink 805 hat and a Motorola StarTAC. Wins the day. That is the question of the day. I didn't know it was there, but I'm happy that I now picked this and saw it. We didn't miss this one. So good question here. Me and my wife make $70,000 a year, currently have $30,000 in stocks. The homes in our area are 280 to 350. We have 700 plus credit scores. Should we just keep saving till we can afford a home? So as Jeb pointed out earlier, the homes will appreciate faster than you can save. At $70,000 a year, probably 50 to 55,000 net income. So how much are you able to save out of that? Let's say you could save $10,000 a year to get $20,000 savings, and it take you 2 years. If that home appreciates 10%, it's already gone up more than $20,000. It's going to appreciate faster than you can. And that extra $20,000 that you put down, we went through this earlier, it's going to save you about $5 per thousand. So it's going to save you $100 a month on the payment. So it's just the market is moving too fast and getting way too far ahead to try and save to keep up with it. Maybe in another market, in a flat market, in a declining market, the prudent thing would be to get some more money saved and feel better about your equity position. But in the current market, if the debt to income ratio is in line and a $300,000 home should work just fine with current rates and your $70,000 income, I'd get the house bought before they get more expensive.
There you go. Michelle has a question here about companies, fly homes, really, that put in cash offers on a house on your behalf and then immediately sell it back to you at the same price. So, somebody asked me a similar question yesterday. I looked it up. I wasn't familiar with these two companies, but they asked me about different companies, and I looked those up, and there were a couple examples, and they're all kind of the same. And so what they're talking about is essentially, you own a home. So most the cases that I saw is that you own a property. Essentially, you hire this company on your behalf to sell your property, and they will go out and buy the property that you're looking to buy in cash. And when you close on your property, you can then repay them and get a loan for the new property. Really convoluted. There's some things here that I don't understand about it. One of those is if that company goes out and buys a property on your behalf and they're willing to pay it in cash, and in some cases you're having to go above the asking price, multiple offers, whatever, are they willing to do that for one to get you the property? And if they are, what happens if you can't close on the property? What happens if your property doesn't sell for whatever reason? I know that the examples that I read was that they are willing to pay you cash for your property if it doesn't sell in a period of time or what have you. Most companies that are willing to do that aren't willing to pay you market value for your property. So what happens if your property doesn't sell for what you're trying to sell it for? It sells for less. And now are you on the hook to buy this property from this company that's now paid it in cash? Or I don't know. There's way too many things going on here, and things that often seem too good to be true usually are. And this is one of those examples that, hey, look, if Josh comes to me and says, hey, dude, you like that house? I'm willing to go buy that house in cash, and you just pay me when your house closes. Something doesn't seem right there. So I think there's probably more to it than meets the eye. I think there's probably some documents that you have to sign and go through to make sure that it's what you think it is. I don't know enough about either of these companies or any of these companies doing this sort of thing to be able to give you guidance in it. I would just tell you, if you're considering it, make sure you're checking all the boxes and you're really reading through these things, and maybe even have an attorney involved in it, because you just want to make sure you're not on the hook for something that may go sideways in the future. And if Josh, you have anything you want to add to that, go for it. But I know we had
no. The only explanation I could possibly see for it is they want to make a fee. So, hey, again, it's a company with large access to capital, and they're trying to get yield on that capital. So how do they do it? Hey, I buy this cash, and you have 30, 60, 90 days to buy it from me. And I would assume that the longer you tie up their cash, the more you're going to pay for it.
They say, though, that you buy it at the same price. But who knows, right? I mean,
so
that's what I read. Yeah.
Are they writing the offer for you and then making the commission on it?
Yeah, probably.
It's got to be the only way. No one does anything for free. So where is their money? There's a 2.5% commission. Cool. We make that, and you have 60, 90 days to buy it would be my best guess.
Yeah, but you need to, again, understand what happens if you don't buy it, right? Are you in some sort of legal matter at that point? So again, sorry, don't know enough, but we do have a couple of super chats that have come in that I want to get to.
Jeb, one of those might be the most amazing super chat yet. See if you can figure out which one it is.
Is that the Elliott Wave review?
Yeah, and it's not the Elliott Wave. Is not the fascinating part about his super chat. Did you see it yet?
Who's in the picture? I can't see it.
No, that's Canadian $5 that he just paid you.
Oh.
I think that's like $6.50. That's like $2,805.
I thought that was California dollars. I thought they were different. I thought that meant they were going to be taxed at like 70%. And
the Socialist Republic of California has not issued their own currency yet, although it's not out of the question.
So Aaron came in first, so I'm going to go with him. Aaron, thank you. Normal viewer or regular viewer out there. Thanks for the support. I think you bought up in Washington recently, I believe, if I remember correctly. Bought new construction, duplex. HOA only has 2 units. Builder will transfer the HOA to us. Any suggestion for self-managed HOAs? No.
So Aaron, here, I actually have some insight on this. I lived in a 4-unit condo that was self-managed, and thankfully it was a 4-plex that was converted here in Huntington Beach to illegally, by the way.
I was going to say illegally.
Let's ignore that part. It's not germane to this conversation, Jeb. But it was converted by the owner, and she had experience with a large association. So she handled everything. She did a great job with it. So that wasn't the illegal part about our situation. So it went very well, but we sold when Pat was about 72, 73 years old. And my thought was always, what in God's name happens when Pat is no longer here? Because she does a great job of running it. I've done several of these. They're common here in California on the beach, where you have these oceanfront properties. It's easier to build a bigger home with a common wall. So they're a 2-unit condo. So I know they work and they have been successful. It's just the Subdivision Act in your state has a lot of requirements. You're probably going to want to engage an attorney to give you some a game plan of what you want to do and how you want to manage it. Hopefully, there's not a lot of common areas, so there's not a lot of need for big dues and expenditures, because the two of you are going to have to agree. And two is a problem. In my building, we had four. We had the potential for a problem if two of us wanted something and two wanted the other. But hopefully, we would have one rogue owner against three, and it was a pretty easy vote. So those would be the only insights that I have. Definitely engage an attorney to give you an opinion. You're going to pay, but you at least have some written guidance on what to do and how to manage. They may offer to manage it for you. I don't think with 2 units I would engage a professional management company. It's just an additional expense, and I don't know what you're gaining from it. A smart person can walk their way through it. You're just going to need some guidance from someone to tell you what exactly needs to be done. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, Aaron, I feel bad. I feel like we extorted you out of the $499 because I was about to click on your question, which you had asked previously, and then your super chat popped up. But either way, we got your question answered.
Oh, so did he ask the same question earlier?
Yeah, and I was about to click it, and we got busy. The 2 super chats popped up.
Sorry,
one
Aaron.
was his.
All right. Well, that's how you do it, I guess. We just sit here until they pay.
Yeah.
Kyle's coming in. Look at these real estate baddies. Baddies, huh? Look at that. I'm not even sure where to go with that, Kyle. You guys probably know Kyle out there, Win the House You Love. Check him out if you don't. Puts a lot of good content out there. Makes mine look fairly amateur in many ways.
Jeb, I wish we had Kyle on right now, because the other super chat, our Canadian $5, is pros and cons of buying cheap duplexes in Cleveland. Kyle's in Ohio, right?
He's in Dayton. So Dayton. I think in Dayton you actually look up to the people that live in Cleveland.
There you go.
Based on the way he talks on Dayton, he seems to crap on Dayton quite often. So they might kick him out here soon. I'm not sure. He might have to go live in Cleveland.
So the big thing, and now I'm super intrigued. We have an Elliott Wave expert paying in Canadian dollars, asking questions about Cleveland duplexes. So it's just
There's really intriguing. Going on here.
There's a lot going on. This is an intriguing question. So in terms of a good or bad investment long term, it's going to be more of a cash flow investment. Cleveland, I look back and I could have bought as many duplexes as I wanted in Cleveland for about $12,000 in 2008, 2009. I was part of a coaching group that was based out of Cleveland, and I wanted no part of it. Now, looking back, I'm the dummy, because they're all, $100,000, $150,000. You could have bought as many as you wanted. They were like Skittles. But, looking back, so what is the appreciation potential? How much has changed about Cleveland? I'm not the expert on Cleveland. That's why I wish Kyle was here, could give us more insight into the economy. Has it really improved? Is there enough fundamental income there to keep rents positive? At $100,000, if you rent both sides for $500-$600, you're going to do well. My barber is from Michigan, and at the bottom, he bought a house in Michigan for $20,000, did a $10,000 rehab on it. It brings in $800 a month rent. Now today, it's 10 years later, it's only worth maybe $40,000. Appreciation has done not anything to write home about, but every month he gets an $800 check. He has maybe $1,000 a year of expenses. It's a good investment. It's going to be more of a cash flow investment versus an appreciation investment.
And that's what I would have said too. You just got to weigh the cash flow versus appreciation. In Cleveland, and God said no one looks up to Cleveland. So there you have it. They're too funny. I was actually going to send him a link to join us in this thing. I couldn't get to it. I was trying to figure out how to get to it, and so we could be 3 talking heads here. You guys would hate us. I did see a good question here. I was going to add. Oh, here we go. Sing and Listen has, how do you spot a bad neighbor before signing the paperwork? So, one thing I recommend as a home buyer, if you're a home buyer, you are buying property, in any potential neighborhood is, not only drive the property different times of the day, the weekends, what have you, but also go knock on the doors, meet the neighbors. This is a good way, if you don't know the neighborhood, to find out who lives around you, what they think about a neighborhood. Now, if you're familiar with the area, not necessary, but if you're not, a lot of times home buyers right now in this market are willing to go outside of maybe areas that they're familiar with, because they're looking for property and can't find anything, and maybe something pops up in another area, and they're like, you know what, I'm willing to go there, same travel, same distance to work and kids and all that good stuff, so why not? And then they get in the property and not really know the area. So, drive around at different times, knock on doors, meet people, get out of your car, walk the sidewalks, that sort of thing. I mean, it gives you a good idea of who lives there, and curb appeal, right? If you pull up to a house and all the neighbors have crappy yards, or the house beside you has a crappy yard, but everybody else is well maintained, chances are that's the I was going to say sour egg, but that wouldn't really be a quote that would be normal. That would be the bad egg, if you will, in the bunch. And so just, be vigilant, be detailed in doing that. And, there's no guarantees, right? I mean, you never know who's going to move in or who's going to sell or who's going to rent to something else, but you can get a pretty good idea by just doing a couple simple things versus just ignoring it and moving right in.
And if you do the drive-by in the neighborhood, go midweek during the day, and there's either going to be a housewife or a retired man who is the neighborhood busybody, and they'll poke their head out of the door, and they will want to talk to you, and they'll tell you more than you wanted to know. You have to take it all with a grain of salt, but you'll get a lot of intelligence on the neighborhood. And the last thing I would say, how do we spot a bad neighbor? A good sign that there's a bad neighbor is if they have a stained wife beater and a bottle of Jim Beam in their hand at like 2:00 on a Tuesday. That's a good sign that's not the neighbor you want.
I might just be taking a break that week, Josh. It's spring break for my kids. I might just be off on a Tuesday. Maybe that's why I'm doing the live today versus Wednesday, because tomorrow I want to wear a wife beater and drink bourbon.
A little Jim Beam staycation.
Yeah, here's a good question. Again, it comes from Kyle, Win the House You Love, asking about offer letters. So fair housing rules. So recently there's been a change to fair housing where, I used to call them love letters to sellers. You call them offer letters, whatever, where we would encourage home buyers to write a letter with their offer so that the seller gets an idea of who's buying their property. And we many times included photos of the family. We included details about the family and that sort of thing. And so fair housing has come out, within the last, I don't know how long it's been now, a couple of months, and said that, we're not supposed to, home buyers shouldn't be writing these letters because it could influence the seller's decision in who they accept for an offer. It could be discrimination. It could be they choose somebody that because they have a family when, the person that didn't have a family didn't get chosen because they didn't have kids or whatever. It's the world that we live in now. So, Kyle, I tell sellers to write them. Well, first off, let me clarify. I ask the other side usually, hey, is your seller open to receiving letters? Yes, they are. No, they're not. If they are, I encourage my clients to write something, not personal about them, but what they liked about the property, what they liked about the neighborhood, what they, a lot of times sellers, they've done upgrades on their homes. They appreciate that stuff. It's important to them. I'm telling my client, hey, write about that, right? I mean, tell them how much you love that they added the mantle around the fireplace and it was hand carved or whatever it was that helps you stand out. Now, could that be the reason that the seller picks that buyer? Potentially, but then it doesn't come down to race. It doesn't come down to discrimination or anything like that could influence, or cause somebody to say that their offer wasn't accepted because of X, right? So I think it's important to know who your audience is. So who is your seller? Do they want to know this? A lot of times sellers want to know who's buying their home. Josh has given the example the last couple of weeks of his aunt selling out in the desert. And, she didn't want somebody moving in that had a VRBO that was going to rent it out every weekend. How did that pop up? What did I do there? That was like a trick. I did something with my hand and hit it like a magic trick.
So it's a subtle suggestion to email us.
Yeah, I don't even know how to go back. Here we go. Didn't want it renting out to every weekend, and because she knew the neighbor, she'd been there a long time, and to her, having somebody that respected the neighbors and whatever was important to her. So it's hard to say. I don't know how it's going to be used going forward. I mean, I've had properties that I've been selling where buyers just dropped off the letter on the doorstep directly to the owner. So they bypassed the agent completely and said, here's the letter to the seller. The seller actually appreciated it and sent me a copy of it, and it meant something to them. So, I think even if you can't do it, if your seller's not willing to do it, I think they are important, or your agent's not willing to do it. I think they are important in the process, could influence and allow you to get your offer accepted. So maybe something to consider, not a recommendation, but just something out there if you're going that direction.
And I just like, for me on this, I hate that we live in a world where the government or the regulatory agency thinks that there's idiots out there. There's biased people, there's bigoted people. You can't legislate against it. If you look back versus 30 years ago, there's far less of them. But let's be realistic. Let's say you have a racist neighbor, he's selling his house and he hates Asians. Do you think you can't see Asian surnames? Or are we going to say we can't put names on offers? We're going to do them blind? You can't protect against stupid, bigoted people doing stupid, bigoted things. And for the most part, we're legislating to the exception. I know those people are out there. I know they exist, but I also know that most people are good people and they do want what's best for their neighborhood. They want what's best for their home. We get irrational emotional attachments to their home. Like if someone came in and offered me top dollar, but I knew that they were going to, I don't know, be wrenching on cars in the garage, my beautiful garage with the epoxy floor and the big TV where I like to hang out and watch Angel games in the summer, I wouldn't like that. It doesn't mean I'm bigoted against them. It means that I have an attachment to my home and I want it to go to a good person. It's sad that that's where we're at.
Yeah, and here's one on that. So NT offer letter got me the home. Top offer was 1 million down payment. I wasn't even close to that. So, again, the people that don't get the house will be the ones complaining. And that unfortunately is the society we live in at the moment, where everybody has a voice. I mean, people are on YouTube giving their voice. They're sharing their thoughts on the housing and lending every week. I mean, these people think they should be here. It's crazy. We shouldn't be, right? But anyway,
Jeb,
yep.
We're at 2 hours and 4 minutes.
All right.
And we have a question literally titled "The Final Question." Are you ready for the final question today?
I am. I think that's the way to end it.
So it's Kyle dominating the show here at the end, saying, how in the world can I grow cool stubble like you all have? I'm struggling over here. Kyle, you're not going to like the answer.
Puberty.
The answer is get old. You have to get old, and it comes in fast and furious. I literally have to go and get my ears waxed tomorrow because it's coming out of my ears. So the answer is you don't want it. Stay young and don't have the cool stubble and just don't get old.
Yeah, there you go. And we are running at the end here, guys. Josh, throw your contact information up if you want there. We appreciate you guys joining us again. This was a rare occasion that we showed up on a Tuesday, but we appreciate you guys being here. You stuck with us for 2 hours, and we appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, give us a thumbs up. Follow the channel. Josh is one day he's going to post a video on that channel. I don't know when it's going to be.
Bro, I just told you I edited 12 videos today.
He did nothing of the sort. He says a lot of things, and he said that he didn't like that music, but I saw him in the background when that music was playing. Initially, he was actually bobbing his head a little bit. And if
Absolutely.
I could have videotaped it and posted it, I would have done it. But one day he's going to post a video, and then all of you guys are going to follow Josh, and I'm going to be left here. Might be Kyle and I.
It'll be life changing.
Maybe it'll be Kyle and Josh. Might just a full lender show. No real estate agents involved. That's how you get it done. But we will be back next week. Thanks for joining us again. Parting words, Joshua.
No, it's a crazy market. We think we're seeing some stabilization here in interest rates. It'll be interesting with the hot inflation figures coming up the next couple of months, but stay tuned. We'll get you the information you need to know. If you're out there trying to get an offer under contract, be patient, do your best, do everything you can, and let the rest of it go, because we're not in control. It's a crazy, crazy market.
Yep. Make sure you're working with a professional, whether it's on the lending side or the real estate side. It will make your life a lot easier, I promise. All right, guys, have a good night. We will talk to you soon.